Former Jackson State wide receiver Malachi Wideman has entered his name into and been accepted to the NFL Supplemental Draft. Let's talk about it, what it means. What is the Supplemental Draft? I know some of you guys are wondering what that is. And just about Malachi after the break. Stay tuned. What is going on, everybody? What is going on, everybody? My name is JeffLightsyJr. This is the Victory Formation Sports Show right here on JeffLightsYJr, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your content. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, and the notification bell because we upload all the time. Now, former Jackson State standout and former All-SWAC performer Malachi Wideman, he has decided he will no longer play college football and has declared for the NFL Supplemental Draft. And a bunch of questions behind that. Let me go ahead and take you to an article by On3 that talks about Malachi's decision and exactly what the supplemental draft is for those who do not know. It's his former Tennessee signee. You know, they got to throw in the Tennessee signee because it's On3. They do big publications. An HBCU standout, accepted into NFL supplemental draft. It says Malachi Wideman, former Tennessee signee who went on to star for Jackson State, has entered the NFL supplemental draft. Aaron Wilson, a reporter for Houston TV station KPRC, reported that Weidman applied for the supplemental draft and has been accepted by the NFL. Weidman was full of promise when he signed to Tennessee in 2020. He was a two-sport star from Florida, 6'5", 190. He has decided he best play wide receiver for the Vols. After that, he transferred to Jackson State, where he played for Coach Prime and caught passes from Shador, had 12 touchdowns in 2021. Didn't really see a lot of the field last year due to some off the field stuff, some grade stuff, you know, and he really just wasn't able to showcase his talents during the 2022 season. It looked as if Malachi was coming back for the 23 season at Jackson State. There were some early videos early in spring that showed him getting equipment, getting some of the Under Armour stuff, and then it just never kind of came about. And then in April, he posted on his Instagram he was leaving JSU. And then the NFL Supplemental Draft is July 11th. It says the NFL Supplemental Draft is scheduled for July 11th. The league hasn't conducted a supplemental draft, and this is also part of the thing. The NFL hasn't done a supplemental draft because of COVID since 2019. So it's the first year they're bringing it back in 4 years. And that's why some people, you know, just to give you a refresher, the NFL has conducted supplemental drafts since 1977. And since then, 46 players have found their way to the league via the secondary draft, not the one that takes place in April. And how it works is essentially the supplemental draft was created to give players a chance who missed the deadline for the NFL draft in April, and something happened to where they couldn't return to school. Right. And so early in the 70s, part of the thing was guys were getting drafted to USFL and the NFL. They test out so they didn't declare for the original draft, go play in the USFL or be a part of the USFL, leave that, come to the NFL, and you can get drafted with the in the supplemental draft. How the supplemental draft works is, and it kind of explains it here, it says players who are considered for the NFL supplemental draft certainly have unique situations. Bernie Kosar graduated from Miami in 1985 and was taken in the first round of the supplemental draft. The Eagles took Hall of Famer Chris Carter in the third round of the 1987 supplemental draft because Chris Carter lost his eligibility at Ohio State for signing with an agent. In 1984, there were actually 3 Pro Football Hall of Famers that were drafted in the supplemental draft: Steve Young, Gary Zimmerman, and Reggie White, and they all went in the first round. But those are some pretty unique cases, and how it works is, I missed this part. It says the supplemental draft works a bit differently. Reading right here. The supplemental draft works a bit differently than the one that unfolds in April. If a team is interested in a player, it then places a bid along with the round. If more than one team bids on a player, the player goes to the team assigned a higher spot in the draft order. And if a team uses a pick in the supplemental draft, then it loses the choice in next year's draft. So meaning if you place a bid for a guy in the 5th round of the supplemental draft and you're awarded, you get to draft that guy, then you turn around and lose your 5th round pick in the next year's April's draft. So meaning if someone decides, hey, I'm going to take a chance on a 6'5", 200-pound 40-inch vertical guy in Malachi Wideman, who had 12 touchdowns in the SWAC when he actually played and has extraordinary athleticism, a freak of an athlete. And I decided I want to take him in the 5th round of the supplemental draft in 2023, and that happens. Then in 2024, I will lose a 5th round pick. Some of the more recent players that got drafted, because I talked about a bunch of guys from the 80s. Some of the more recent players that were taken in supplemental drafts. Terrell Pryor had to declare for the supplemental draft because he lost his eligibility selling his own merchandise while he was at Ohio State. Josh Gordon, one-time All-Pro in the NFL, was taken in the supplemental draft after essentially being dismissed from Baylor. And so the supplemental draft, one, because it hasn't been around in the last 4 years, isn't something that gets talked about a lot. So a lot of people don't know how it works. And two, because of the rise of NIL and the transfer portal, we don't really hear about the supplemental draft as much either, because the things that would have guys lose their eligibility, taking money, signing with agents, et cetera, that stuff's legal now. So the supplemental draft isn't as prevalent as it once was back in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s. But with the new NIL, meaning you can get paid, so meaning you won't lose your eligibility for payments and you won't lose your eligibility for having agents, that is now a thing. But in the unique case of a guy like a Malachi Wideman, that's why the supplemental draft is still around. If I was an NFL team, I'd take a chance on Mal. I would take a chance on Malachi because I think he's that talented. I think at 6'5", I think with a 40-inch vertical, I think with his elite athleticism, both as a football player and as a basketball player, that's something worth taking a flyer on. That's something worth a 6th round pick to me. 6th round pick, 7th round pick, maybe even a 5th round pick. That'll be worth it. Malachi Wideman, to me, is talented enough for a 5th round pick. And that's why I really wish I would have been able to see him in this newfound Jackson State offense, right? With Maurice Harris and TC Taylor running the show. But I understand Malachi is a guy who may have felt jerked around by Jackson State a bit. Not necessarily this staff. This is a brand new staff. But we're talking about a kid who is 6'5". Now, yeah, he had his grade issues. He did. Prime made that very, very clear. It's not that they don't want to play Malachi, it's that he's not allowing them to play him. So he's had his issues off the field when it comes to academics, mainly academics, nothing legal. But I really wish he would have came back this year to play, because I think he's a guy that would get drafted in April's draft. He's that talented in my eyes. But nonetheless, Malachi Wideman is going to the NFL Supplemental Draft. I think somebody will take a chance on Malachi, and then from there, it's up to him to prove what he's able to do. Prove me right, and some of us right, that he is talented enough to play in the NFL, because I think he is that good. He's just got to have that work ethic, that willpower, and that discipline to make it happen. But I'm rooting for Malachi. Friend of the show's been on this platform before. I'm rooting for Malachi. All the best. And even if it doesn't work out in the NFL Supplemental Draft, there's still the XFL. There's still the USFL. There's still other ways for Malachi to get on NFL radars and to eventually make it to an NFL roster, which I think he's talented enough to do. We're talking about a guy that started on both the Jackson State football team and basketball team one year. He's that talented. This dude is a beast, athletic freak. It's just about how bad he can hone all of that in, how much he can hone all of that in, and that discipline is the number one thing when it comes to this kid, because the talent is not. He's not for the lack of talent. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Malachi Wideman, former Jackson State standout wide receiver, has entered the NFL Supplemental Draft. Do you think he'll get drafted? And if so, where? Leave your comments down below. Once again, my name is JeffLightsyJr. This is the Victory Formation Sports Show right here on JeffLightsYJr, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you get your content. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button before you get out of here. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JLightsy7. That is on Instagram and Twitter at JLightsy7. Thank you guys for tuning in.